I like the fact that the way these came about was basically coffee conversations, and then it was
Sponsored by Costa.
yeah, yes, for today. Normally Monster Energy drink, 0 calorie, of course. But it was nice that we did these, and then all of a sudden you figured out in Dubai you can rent these studios, and you can just come in and get things moving really quick. So we just show up, we grab coffee, we walk in, and this week we have topics. You wrote some topics, so I'm going to let you kick off the week. So tell us where we are going to start.
So this is episode 5, if I remember
5,
right.
yes.
And we've just come off the back of AI Week in Dubai. So last week was all about AI. There's loads of conferences going on, lots of people talking around this, lots of tech focus, lots of people chasing what's the latest with technology, what's happening as the agents evolve, as LLMs evolve. And we've been doing a lot of talking recently around the sort of the human side of things, what it means to be and retain that human element to it, which is always a bit of a gamble when you set yourself against where industry is chasing, industry is very excited about, and you always start to second guess yourself to think, well, is it just me or are we really right about this? So I was really pleasantly surprised this week when we saw the announcement of Studio One, which is Ajaz Ahmed, ex-founder of AKQA's new agency. 6 months ago, he left WPP. This week announced that he's starting the new agency Studio One. And I thought it was really interesting to see how he's announced it, which is with, first of all, 2 videos. So the first video is just a logo, literally an animated logo, which made me think of really nostalgic themes. So it gave me the theme of MTV when they launched, and then 80s anime and comics. And you watch it, and as a slightly older digital native, I see this is the things that I grew up with reflected in this sort of animated logo that says nothing about what they're doing. It's just, you know who it is, you know what they've done in the past, and you get this sense of this is something fresh and new coming. So I'm really excited to see what they do. But the big play for me was the second video. And the second video they launched was just following a father and son cycling around the world. I'm like, this is not tech. This is not AI. This is about humans connecting with humans. And there's a lot of emphasis on love and humanity. And I really like that. And that's what makes me think, do you know what? We're not the only ones saying this. And there's some quite interesting people who are playing this tune as well.
I am, this week coming up, I'm speaking at a Friends of Figma event since Config, their main conference, is going on. And part of the topic that I'm discussing, so I'm discussing the whole sort of AI transformation and user experience. Within the talk, I have a few slides on envisioning the future, 2 or 3 years. One of the things I've made it a point on for these slides is you don't have a phone in them. At one point, you have a person on a laptop, but then the rest of it is maybe it's in your ear, or maybe it is ambient somehow, maybe it's glasses. But it's getting away that we always have this thing, this phone, this little piece of glass that sits between me and you when I'm thinking about something or when I want to do something. And so I think there's really something in that where, whether it's AI or where technology is going, and I've often said there's this confluence of technologies right now with augmented reality, with large data sets, with Gen AI, all this stuff coming together right now that is fundamentally changing the landscape of how we design experiences and how we look at the creation of experiences for any industry. But from that, hopefully the technology in a way starts to reduce and the human part starts to come out more. I really think there is something to that with everything that you hear with people saying there's more anxiety, there's more depression, all of this. And then we're such a social species, we've reduce that with COVID. And now, hopefully, we might see that come back. Hopefully, we won't end up in the WALL-E future where everyone is just in their own space, or the Matrix future where everyone is in their own pod. But there is this level where technology just is embedded with everything around us and allows us to connect more.
Yeah. Making me think now. So the first thought that comes to mind is that we have to actively make choices. And the thing that's really annoying me at the moment is how many people are out there saying AI is here and that ship has sailed and you've just got to get on with it and people aren't going to stop doing that. I'm like, there's lots of things that are out there that we could let ourselves do. Like we could go out and eat junk food constantly every day, or we could shoot up heroin or something every day. We choose not to.
Well, a lot of people do, actually, especially on the food part.
But there's things out there which we know are bad for us and we know aren't conducive to a well-balanced life and a personal development path that we actively choose to avoid because we want something better for ourselves. I accept that technology is very powerful and it's here and it's in front of us and we have to be aware that it's very tempting to use it for certain things. I think my point is we've got to make active choices about, do we want that WALL-E future? And if we don't, then what are we going to do about it? Are we going to resist the temptation to use ChatGPT and be lazy for certain things, to use AI to replace elements of our life that are enjoyable? Or
Okay, so this is where we start to disagree. And I personally don't disagree with what you're saying in terms of we need to make active choices. We need to pull ourselves out of comfort because the only time that you grow, the only time that you progress is when you are uncomfortable. Why do you go to the gym? Why do you have cold showers? Why do you study? All of these things. Why do you read? For a lot of people, these things aren't comfortable, but they promote growth.
yes.
That being said, I think in our first episode, what I hold to from society overall is convenience will rule out. For me personally, I think you're going to continue to see a divergence of people who are, let's say, more socioeconomically stronger in the way, at least in the US, a lot of people who are well off, they don't let their kids have devices too early. They send their kids to schools that don't have devices embedded in them because they want to build these social connections. They want to have discomfort versus when you give a 2-year-old an iPad, yeah, maybe you're setting them up to be a digital native, but without that level of discomfort, you're never going to push yourself in the way that you should. So I tend to think that 90%, 95% of the world is going to live in that comfortable spot and probably, sadly, maybe live in a depressed area, maybe be eating junk food, not have dopamine, not have serotonin, right? Or get that from their devices, get that dopamine hit from TikTok, get that, serotonin from the web. I think that's going to be the majority. And I think you're still going to have that 5 or 10% that's going to stand out. But I just see that diverging. I don't know.
And I don't disagree with that. I think it's right, though. And I think we have choices that we can make to change it.
Right or wrong doesn't matter. It's what's happening.
But you don't make those choices for yourself. So when we talk about, junk food's
I
easy.
do make those. I literally make those choices every day for myself. This is what annoys me is when people are like, oh, Facebook and TikTok, they got you addicted. It's, yeah, so do cigarettes. And I make a choice around that. I make a choice not to do those things. So I agree, yes, everything is made like cigarettes where it's made to hook you. But at some point, there is some personal responsibility. Maybe that's too much of a libertarian point of view.
It's all personal responsibility. But I think that's my point, is that I would struggle to work for a tobacco company at the moment because of the influence they have on people. There are certain brands that I would choose not to be involved with because I think it doesn't match what I see as my moral compass, and I wouldn't want to support them. So I think we have choices that we make for ourselves, and we have choices that we make that reflect how we influence the world. And I think that's what it comes down to. Ultimately, you've got to be accountable for your own choices and accept that if you let your kids play awful games on tablets and phones all day, every day, then there is going to be a result that comes from that. And I say that very mindful that I've done that, and I'm trying to get my kids more onto things like Duolingo and away from tablets, riding bikes, which is working really well. But I think you have to be accountable and accept the consequences for some of these things, and just saying, oh, the AI ship has sailed, therefore I'm going to use ChatGPT because it's easy and I can be lazy with it, or I'm going to use it instead of going out and talking to a real person. I'll have a conversation with an AI instead.
Okay, so then what you're getting to is, we talked about this in episode 4 last week, or 2 weeks ago, responsible usage.
Yeah.
That there's a level of responsible usage that I need to think about when I'm using AI. And I think your point was that when you ask things of AI, and you've been asking a lot of it, right? You've turned this into a real companion. You don't always take the first answer. You think through, is this the right answer? Is this what I need? Do I need to drill down further? Part of responsible usage is learning how to use these tools. Yeah. If I had to say where I see a challenge, it's that we're throwing all these tools out. We're throwing everything out, but there is not education around responsible use of these things. And you could say the same for YouTube or the internet, that it comes down to personal responsibility, that I can go onto YouTube for education, or I can go to YouTube for bum fight videos. Pick one of them.
We know what you watch.
Yeah. Pro wrestling videos. It's a step up from bum fights,
Small
okay?
step. But that's a great
Yeah,
example.
yeah.
So I've got a lot of friends who complain about their Facebook feeds being all negative and doom and gloom and miserable. I don't have that problem, and I use Facebook more than I should admit. But my Facebook feed is quite inspirational, quite upbeat. It's full of things I'm actively interested in watching. That's because I curate what I watch.
Was it always that way? Have you changed it in the last few years? Because I've watched your journey in the last few years and you've become much more health conscious and thoughtful about these things. If you looked at your Facebook feed 5 years ago, would it be the same?
I don't know. I'd love to give you an easy answer. I don't know. I think the reality is that I deliberately don't. The only thing I do, this is not a big active exercise, the only thing I don't do is I don't watch videos that don't align with what I want. And if I see something with somebody I don't agree with or there's something I don't support, I will immediately scroll past it. If it's on a topic that I don't want to get my news, for example, through Facebook, I'll actively go to sites I trust. I'll scroll past it. That's the only thing I do is watch the things that I'm prepared to accept through that channel.
I tend to think we're really bad at reflecting on where we were versus where we are. Somebody told me this once. I think it was called the curse of information. Once you know something, then it's so easy for you to assume everybody knows it. And when somebody doesn't know it, then you're like, oh, how can you not know this?
Yeah, sure.
Like you just found that out a year ago.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think sometimes we learn things and we change things about ourselves and then we forget who we were. Like if I look at my YouTube feed right now or my Instagram feed right now, a lot of it is going to be around health, around AI tech, around education of those items, around aging, around exercise and workouts. If I went and looked at my Instagram feed 5 years ago or 10 years ago, it is going to be much more rage bait. I can tell you that. If I go back to COVID, probably be a lot more gaming.
Yeah.
Probably be a lot more rage content where I see the thumbnail of something and I click on it because the thumbnail looks engaging. Yeah. And a lot of those things got me. How I got out of that was I just kept reading on the impact this is having on me.
Okay.
And then I had to make conscious choices to really not do those things, not look at that content because I had to reflect and say, man, I'm not having a good time with that.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how we got on this topic from AI, but I dig it.
I think curation of your life generally is a good thing to do, whether it's very active or whether it's a little bit unconscious.
Have you had ChatGPT? Like if you write ChatGPT and you say, give me an image of who you think I am based on what I've been.
I have. I'm never sharing that with you. It made me look like some sort of middle manager in I don't know, technology.
Mine nailed me. It was like a person with, basically my haircut. I think it was just a mustache or something, like in a cafe, coffee shop, drinking like a double espresso on a computer. So I don't know what I'm feeding it to get this information, but man, you nailed it.
Yeah,
you nailed it.
It gave me a beard. I'll give it that. Gave me a beard, but it made me look a lot fatter than I was in a very cheap suit. I'm like, oh, thanks.
No, I didn't get a suit. Mine just gave me a basic T-shirt, which I am in. Yeah. And I do have to laugh at this. I told you I had something funny. As I've been posting these videos on LinkedIn, I get a bunch of comments and crap on the shirts that I wear. Again, you're always dressed nice. So I purposefully wore this today to do something a little bit different because my last outfit got me comments of lumberjack since it was flannel. But this one came from a coffee place in Bangkok where I was in Bangkok a few months ago. I went to the same cafe every day, got to know the barista there, loved it, and then just picked up the shirt on the way out. For anyone going to Bangkok or who might be going, it's Yeast or Yeast. I don't know how to pronounce this. YEST.
Okay.
But if you're there, check it out.
Very cool.
So coming back to the topic of AI, we wanted to talk about AI and helping you I don't know if it's get into a flow state or help you with work, but that was the original topic that we wanted to come in on. Where did you want to take that? Because I got a bunch of things. I think you're reading now Art of the Impossible. So I did Art of the Impossible. I did Stealing Fire, Rise of Superman. I think those are all the same author, if I remember. And a bunch of these. Right now I'm reading Dose, which is all about your dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, and how to help regulate all of these things in an era of technology and an era of AI. But I find all of these books that I'm checking out do actually help me get into I don't want to call it a flow state, but a better mental state, a better working state, a better living state where I have a healthy relationship with technology. Where did you want to take it though?
Yeah. Okay. There's a very deep conversation that can be had around this.
We don't have time for deep, dude.
Yeah, and I'm not going there because not just because we haven't got time, because I want to get it a little bit more solid in my own mind first. But I'm interested in it from a team mechanics perspective more than, say, the individual mechanics. I'm interested in how it makes us work together as people, because a lot of what we do is we're not no man is an island. A lot of what we do is in digital delivery, and it's through combinations of people working together. I think one of the problems I have with these books is they talk about very extreme examples. So Art of Impossible is very much about extreme athletes, like the highest performance Olympians.
Yes.
And we're not those people, and nor would I think we want to be those people. When I look at the sacrifices some of those people give up, things like the commitments they make to their physical health to achieve a pinnacle of performance in a certain age range, knowing that it probably takes years off their life later on, that's not what I'm trying to achieve in my life. My life is more about being healthy and peak performance without making those compromises. I think we need to dial it back a notch from that.
But I don't disagree, but what have you learned from that you can apply?
Yeah, okay.
And because you are using AI, ChatGPT and Claude and all these so much on things like diet and exercise and health and life, do you see a correlation between what you are reading and how technology is helping you enable that?
So what I've found, large language models, again, it's usually ChatGPT, have been helpful for this is to help me with lateral thinking across these topics.
Ooh.
And I'll give you an example. So I've long been a big negative detractor of retrospectives after a project. So you get to the end of a project, I hate them. And I'll tell you what.
Okay,
I've
makes you
changed
hate?
my mind, so
Okay,
let's go on a journey here. I think they're a waste of time.
Unpopular opinion.
Yeah. So typically they're done 2 or 3 weeks after a project ends. Everybody's moved on to the next project, and you do this because you feel like we should do a retrospective to find out what we did wrong, what we could do better. So you pull everybody back together when they're now focused on different things a little bit later than you'd like. You go through it all, you all have a nice chat and talk about the things that were awful, some of the things that were good. You write it all up in a PowerPoint slide or something, and you save it on a server, and it never gets looked at again. I've said for a very long time, what a waste of time that is. It might make you feel good at the time, but it's not going to do anything going forwards.
It's not the action, it is what you do with that action. Okay, I just wanted to point that out because it is not the actual retrospective, which personally, I love these when people use them in an appropriate way, which is to learn from them.
Yeah.
And I would agree in a corporate setting, most people don't do that very well.
I don't think I've seen one done well yet in nearly 30 years.
But continue, because I just wanted to call that out.
But that's a key point. And I talked to Janada, my wife, and she runs audit teams as part of what she does. They're typically much shorter projects, 2 weeks in length. They do retrospectives at the end. And I had a big argument with her about this earlier. She said, but I found them useful because we've set the next one based off what we learn in that retrospective. We take actions off the back of it. I'm like, that's quite good. If you actually do something actively with it, then you move away from this cathartic pain sharing and into something else. And particularly for short projects, then I do see the value in it. My challenge is, and what I've started to change my mind around it, is that we don't typically run them very well, not just about the action setting, but the timing around them and the purpose of them. So if we complete a big mammoth task where we've been working our asses off for months on end, we go through a series of achievements along the way. And when you get to the end, you get this sense of, I've done it. You get this serotonin release. And again, I'm not going to go too deep in this, but you get to a point where you get this neurochemical release as a group, as a shared experience. You feel like we've achieved something. If you then do a retrospective very quickly after that, you hit your peak learning opportunity where the stuff that you talk about actually sinks into your head. So forget the PowerPoint. You actively learn from that. You actively reinforce what the things you agree in your brain. So when you go on to next time, you don't need to refer to something. You've reinforced in yourself what you've learned. So the timing's really important. As you said, setting actions which you then refer back to or change a process so it demonstrably does something is the other key factor. And then there's the third part, which is the sense of bonding that comes from it, because when you go through it, you get this sense of psychological safety. There's some great work by Amy Edmonton, I think, who's talked about psychological safety, and Google's Project Aristotle talks about emotional safety, psychological safety being the number one factor behind success of teams. If you start thinking, if we're doing that and you've got a team that is continually working together, it's a great thing to do if you get the timing right. And if you're not just going to break that team up to go and then work on different projects. And I don't think we weigh these things very well. Go.
Where I like that. In the past few weeks, we've been talking about separating out the technology from the human part. And if you have AI doing more and more of the output creation, right? User stories, code, design, it becomes much more about teams and people working together. It feels so much of the conversation we're having with AI is like, how do you augment the person to become this cyborg versus how do you allow machines to be machines, humans to be humans, and you leverage machines in a way that allows you to get the best of that output and produce the best for people to work within. And so I'll give you an example here how I use this and where I was thinking about taking this with the whole flow conversation is on almost a daily or weekly basis. I will gauge what I'm doing from a routine perspective. I feed all of this into ChatGPT, right? It knows my morning routine, it knows what I eat, and I'll oftentimes use it for little nudges, right? And I'll put that in collaboration with books that I read and other things that's just always trying things out, always trying. It doesn't always work out to be better, but it's all about that journey, right? You have to love the journey. What I am finding is the technology is enabling me to have a better time outside of technology. And if I can bring that into work, then if I can have technology deliver output and allow me to coordinate more with teams and have teams feel better, more fulfilled, psychologically safe, maybe that team is only 1/3 or 1/4 of the size that it used to be, right? Because everybody becomes directors and you have these autonomous agents that can go and do everything. But that team becomes much more like a tribe, or I don't want to say cult, but like a tribe that's bonded together.
Yeah.
And that's something really interesting to me. If you think about, so same author, Stealing Fire, talks about the same thing that I love. This guy, Jocko Willink, who is a Navy SEAL person, talks all about the bonding of small teams. Yeah. And Stealing Fire is all about the bonding of sort of small teams. Man, if you could use then AI and technology to help figure out where you really let technology run things and where the human side of things really becomes this bonding element and the team can take advantage of the human side of things. I don't know where I'm going with this, but in my head, it seems like a really cool idea. And I don't know, is anything resonating or are you where are you going? You're all over the place.
No, it is, but let me throw a spanner in the works.
Oh, God.
So one of the things I was reading about as well this week was about how we're moving into the idea of an age of experience. And we've been used to these data prediction models, LLMs, we're getting used to question and answer through them and they guide us on where we're going. But there's an interesting thought that's coming out from the author of AlphaGo, which is David Silver, and Richard Sutton, if I remember rightly, they work together to produce AlphaZero. And their theory is that we're getting to the point where we're going to move beyond these LLMs, move beyond these data prediction models into AI, which models its own world and generates its own data. And the scale in which it can do that will be far vaster than what we've got in terms of agents at the moment, which are leveraging web search and Reddit and whatever they can get their hands on. Yeah. When they can start to model their own worlds and create their own synthetic data from this, then they can start to generate their own experiences. And the challenge with that is then you start to remove the points that a human can intervene and get involved. And at that point, how redundant does a human become in the process if you've got this AI which can model and doesn't necessarily have the need for input at the points where you might have previously thought?
Is that okay, though? Like we keep thinking that, this technology is going to surpass us and we're going to be made redundant.
Yep.
My argument at the moment, after reading things like How to Speak Machine and reading that AI 2027 article, is it okay that we just let machines go off and be machines? We come back to being who we are. What you just said with the age of experience is, if I can take these devices I have and I can fundamentally remove this, any concert you look at now, everyone's holding up a phone. Yeah. I walk around Dubai Marina, everybody's holding up a phone. If I can remove all of that, if technology just becomes this embedded part of everything around me, will that enable me to better connect to people? So you let technology be technology and you let people be people. I think there's something interesting in that theorem. And here's, I'll pass it back to you in a second, but we got to wrap up. And I get too excited by this. There's a book by Neil Stephenson, who coined the metaverse term from Snow Crash. The first book is Ream D. The second book is Fall or Dodge in Hell. And what it talks about is two consciousness that are uploaded and they create worlds to themselves. So this is the whole digital twin sort of thing. Where you could take the digital twin is where I think one of the ways that we could look at that in the future. But these two consciousnesses create their own worlds. And in the book, at the end, hopefully I'm not spoiling this for anyone, it does talk about the separation between the human world, which operates at our speed, and then what is happening in this digital world, which is happening at a different speed. And so you have these two worlds that are living side by side that operate with different principles, different physics, different time scales, but they are still operating together and you can move in between them. And that blew my mind because it gets to the point of I can enter in one world, live a full life in that world, and then come out of it. And there are so many things like that to me that are interesting where you let these two things coexist, but you can move between them as realities. That gets into the whole parallel universe, multiverse. Are we living in a simulation? Who cares? We rent a podcast studio to do this. I can't think that far. But hit me with the last point here.
Yeah, I'll give you something to bounce off and then you do the last thoughts. But one of the things I'm thinking about at the moment is if we are looking at AI and the way it advances at the moment, and we're looking at the points where humans effectively steer it, the whole point of having human reinforced learning, we realize just how critical it is to successful AI. And I've said it before, my big worry at the moment is that the singularity is here. We're building AIs which can self-learn, self-teach, and self-grow. It's just a bit crap. We see problems with it, we see errors in it, and the more we're starting to race ahead on foundations which maybe aren't as solid as they need to be, and we're removing the points that we could intervene and stop problems, I just wonder how far off course we're going to go. I think we should maybe not slow down, but be careful about removing guardrails before we're 100% on 100% positive and self-assured that we built something which is going to stand up to pressure.
I won't cue off the guardrails thing, which I think we can talk about next week. Yeah,
Let me give you a more positive thing to go off while you're thinking. So this week, one good thing I did was rebuild my computer at home. And I did this with ChatGPT.
This was super cool. Yeah.
I did this with ChatGPT, and literally I built computers for 25 years, and they used to be quite hard. Now they're quite easy. It's all Lego. But I knew I wanted to increase my storage because we're doing a lot of video editing for this, and it takes up a lot of space. So I needed to replace something, and I know what I'm doing, what I need to replace. But I asked ChatGPT, look at my hard drives at the moment and tell me which is best for which situation. And I've got a big physical spinning hard drive. I've got some solid state storage as well. And it told me which one of those was slower than the rest from the model number, fairly easy task for it to do, and gave me advice on which driver would be better, for example, gaming and video editing, which one would be better for a boot drive, and which one was really a bit slow and I needed to get rid of it. I took a picture of it, of my motherboard, took the back off the computer, took a picture of it and said, okay, analyze the rest of it and tell me what advice you have. And it went through everything to advise literally down to the point of saying your memory chips are mismatched, that you've got 64 gig of RAM in it, but actually you've got two pairs of 32 which aren't matched. And the speed difference between them is reducing the faster one down to the slower one. It told me that the slot that I was putting the storage drive in it told me where the spacers were positioned and where I needed to move it for that particular chip to be effective from a photo. So I was really amazed that ChatGPT could, first of all, analyze a picture, second of all, connect to the internet and pull stats for these different accessories and compare them and give me advice on it. And third, actively make me better at performing a physical task. That's what I'm excited by agents for, is that ability to connect all of this together.
I know where I'm going to take this to wrap it up. So what you just said, I think it's great. I would say it is such a small way of thinking about what is possible. And this comes off the back of another podcast where somebody, and I forget what this was, but the person brought up that sort of every major invention that we have had. So you can go back and think cars or airplanes or mobile devices or the personal computer or the internet. The person who created it had such a fundamentally small vision for what it could become. And that's what they were talking about with AI. It's like the people who have it now, even like the Sam Altmans and the Mark Zuckerbergs and all this, Jeff Bezos, their view is so small for what it could potentially be. And that's why when I think about this, what you just said with that digital twin type of idea where you can build virtual worlds, which create their own data sets, which then go off and can create multiple other worlds, right? You get the Ready Player One sort of multiple worlds universe type of thing. Yeah, maybe it comes back to, are we living in a simulation? But that entire idea that where we are now, we cannot imagine where we will be in 10 or 20 years. That's to me that made me just blow my mind with how exciting this is and where we could take it. I think we're good for this week. We can wrap up. Dunbar, pleasure as always, and see you back next week.
Thank you.